Hey, this is Jorf coming at you with another speedrun. This time we got creatures for the Commodore 64. I know most of you probably haven't heard of this game, but it's a classic on the C64, so I thought I'd do some commentary and explain some of the details to you. Like for instance, Creatures is an acronym. It stands for Clyde Radcliffe exterminates all the unfriendly, repulsive Earth-ridden slime. I mean, duh, of course it does, right? It's so obvious now. So here we are in the first level with our hero, Clyde Radcliffe. And he's got two attacks. He's got a droopy attack, and if you hold the button down, then you get this breath attack, which is way better. It just melts through guys. It hits on every other frame or something. Some of these enemies might take 8 or 10 hits to kill otherwise. The only downside is that you can't move while you're charging it, so you'll see me jumping a lot here and there. So we'll be using that attack for most of the start of the game here until we can upgrade our weapons. But before I get too far here, I'd like to tell you about the story of Creatures. And it goes like this. Somewhere in the darkest corner of the Milky Way is this small, insignificant planet named Blot. This was a really beautiful place, but the inhabitants, friendly, always good-tempered creatures who called themselves Blotonians, had to flee from a terrible fate. The time had come to build a generational spaceship to go and search for another suitable planet. To leave the past behind, their name was changed, and now they're called the Fuzzy Wuzzies. Not making this up. Coincidentally, a suitable planet was found. However, this happened quite involuntarily, as they had to make an emergency landing after a collision with an asteroid, and the only planet within reach was good old Earth. But it was a blessing in disguise. They landed in the Pacific near an unknown island. After the Fuzzy Wuzzies came ashore, they built a city, and the island was called the hippest place in the known universe. What the Fuzzies did not know was that demons resided on the other side of the island, who, of course, always had a bad temper. It was the friendly nature of the Fuzzies that got on their nerves, and they hated the new name of the island. The demons came up with a cunning plan to get rid of this existence and therefore the good mood of the Fuzzies. They invited the Fuzzies to one of the biggest parties that had ever been celebrated on the island. The Fuzzies, of course, could not resist this invitation. They cleaned their fur and they all went to the party. But when the party was at its best, these nasty demons threw a net over the Fuzzies, captured them and locked them all up in their torture chambers. The only one who escaped these events was Clyde Radcliffe, who left the party slightly tipsy and found a sleeping place in one of the bushes. The next morning he woke up with a throbbing headache, and a breath so bad he could even ignite trees with it. Nevertheless, our brave hero was ready to teach the demons a lesson and save his fellow Fuzzies from the horrible torture chambers. So now that you're all caught up on that compelling story, I can talk about the game, and we're on stage 2 now. Here I take a hit to get through this troublesome pack of monsters. Now you're allowed to take one hit, but the next one will kill you until you reach the next level. So I've planned out all the best places to take hits for the speediest route. And if you've got a keen eye, you'll notice my regular shots are green now instead of red. You can upgrade your weapons in between levels at the shop, and you can upgrade each weapon up to 3 times so that they go through the colors red, green, and then blue. But this will cost you magical creature potions in order to buy these upgrades. In the bottom right next to the time, you can see I have 4 of these right now. And now we're on a little leaf here. If you take a hit on a leaf, you'll die, even if you otherwise could take a hit. Unless you're in midair, which is a strategy I did on the first level. And you'll notice in this specific situation, when I jump off the leaf, I have to jump back on. This is one of the many mysteries of this game. Every version I've played forces you to jump for no apparent reason, and since you can't make it underneath this enemy, you're forced to go backwards. Oh, and also that enemy was invincible. If I ever don't attack an enemy that's right in my path, he's probably invincible. And then here, I need to use the regular attack to take out this enemy at the bottom right, so the upgraded damage will save a little bit of time here. There's several other instances where only a specific weapon can hit an enemy, but we'll talk about those when we get there. And one more thing about lily pads, or leaves, before we see the last of them, is that you can't attack while you're on them. So you gotta do this awkward jumping attack thing, and if your bullets are still traveling when you land back on, then they disappear. It's just not great. But here we are at the boss fight. Don't blink or you'll miss it. Boss fights are just this amalgamation of enemies everywhere, but you only need to kill a certain one to trigger the next level. And then we're under the first torture chamber. There's 9 levels in total, and a torture chamber every 3rd level. And here we need to save our friend Chip from a terrible fate on this Acme Jack. And you do so by lighting this cannon, and then dumping the cannonball into it at the top. If you don't make it in time, it's actually quite gruesome, even for a C64 game. But you won't be seeing that here, so I'll leave that for you to Google. And to thank us for saving him, Chip gives us a whole bunch of potion creatures. And I'm not sure how this works exactly, but I know with my route, if I have 10 creatures, then the countdown will give me 5 each time. And if you have more, it'll only give 1. Perhaps it's the game's way of catching you up if you miss too many, but anyways, now I've got more than usual to buy weapons with. Most importantly, here I'm going to buy 2 of the Flamer and 2 of the Fall-Up. So now the Flamer is like the breath attack, except that you don't have to charge it up, and at its highest level it will be even more powerful. The only weapon that's more powerful is the Scatter Ball, which shoots out a little ways in front of you and then it explodes. The effective range on it makes it a little bit hard to use most of the time, and it's a bit more expensive to buy as well. So we'll stick with the Flamer, and to change weapons I do a little pause here while I hold shoot and then hit down. And that pause allows me to cuddle right up to this owl, and make it through this cycle without stopping. I guess now I've got half a second to go back and talk about the boss fights. Because you're probably wondering what the heck's going on, right? Well, it turns out if you touch an enemy, that they die too. And on boss fights, even if you have no more hits to take, you'll still make it to the next level. This is useful for about 2/3 of the bosses. The one after this one is out of reach unfortunately, but that's why I bought the Fall-Up attack. You can make it past this flame without stopping, but it's a pretty small window to do it, so I just wait it out. There's lots of small things like this, and these are the kinds of things you have to weigh out when you speedrun a game, especially one that probably won't get any competition. Here we're coming up on the first swimming section, and I know if I'm on pace if I'm splashing before the music drops out. These jumps above the fish are a little tough, but not too bad, especially the second one with that little crevice in the ceiling. And then here we're swimming again, and if you take a hit underwater, then it's a one-hit KO. But if you take a hit while you're swimming along the bottom, then you're allowed to use that hit point. I guess the game doesn't recognize if you're swimming if you're right at the bottom or something. But that allows me to swim right through that tricky section, and then we have to dodge just a few more fish here before we can breathe air again. You'll see the oxygen meter at the bottom, and you can use the bubbles underwater to refill it, but it's not really important here when you're as speedy as I am. A quick wait here, and that'll allow me to get by this worm and go underneath this owl without stopping. And then it'll be just a few more enemies here before we get to the evil tree boss. But of course we aren't scared at all. We're just gonna jump right into his mouth and on to the next stage. Here we are at the shop again. Don't have to buy anything this time though. And if you've noticed the transition between levels is a little quick, it's because I've removed a couple minutes of loading time, just for your viewing pleasure. Starting off 2-2, I can use the invulnerability you get at the start of a level to swim through a couple fish here. Then I need to swim up above and kill this blue enemy, because he's linked to a fish in my way in the water. When enemies are linked, one of them is usually invincible, though killing the other one will destroy them both. Next, I closely follow this fish here, so I can spawn an owl in the top right. Then once I'm past, I can swim up next to the owl and steal some of his oxygen, so I can get through the rest of this section. Here's another instance of linked enemies, where the gray enemy above is linked to the red jelly ahead. But this time I just take a hit along the bottom of the water to get through, instead of going up and around to kill him. Now we're done swimming for the game, just need to walk this level in. This larger creature potion will give me 5 creatures instead of 1. And by now you've probably noticed there's 3 different types of potion ingredients. There's the tall skinny ones, which seem to come in large supply. And then there's the spiky one and the smaller round one, which I need to stop here and there and collect so that I have enough for the third world. Circle Owl here is invincible. Then we need to watch out for these really surprise looking trees. And the second tree from the ground. Watch out, he'll get ya. Here there's a round creature following me on the left side, but like, I don't have time for that. Don't you know me? And then here I'm careful not to destroy the spiky creature with my attack. You know, sometimes you can destroy them, sometimes you can't. Sometimes enemies are invincible, sometimes they're not. These are the kind of things that really keep you on your toes throughout this game. Here I just take a death. I used to try and jump over these trees. There's 3 of them, and I'm pretty sure at least one of them is a frame-perfect jump. But it turns out just to be as fast to take a death here. Almost at the end of this one. Just a couple more zany trees in the way. And then here's the first boss we can't just jump up and kill, since he's way in the sky. So I switch to the fall up attack and take him out. Also, if I'm not all the way on the right, the hitbox of this tree on the left will wrap all the way around and kill me. Good stuff. Next up is torture chamber number 2, and our boy Chaz is really in a pickle. We start by hitting the switch to move him to the left. Then before he falls off, we hit it again and send him to the right, and this will give us enough time to beat the stage. While he's moving around, a cup of water is filling, which is our tool to wake up this sleeping man on the left. Why can't we just kill the guy on the machine? Aw, that would just be too simple, wouldn't it? Plus, if somebody has a 10-ton weight hanging over them, you just have to use it on them. That's just how it is. It's in the rules. So we wake up this guy here and grab some popcorn, because things don't move that fast around here. And then we gotta do the fire dance with this green boy at the top. You can kill him a little faster than I do here, but it usually doesn't happen. And then, as everyone knows, rats just love a big old can of potato chips, even if there's bits of a rope mixed in there. Yup. Calm down, Chaz. I'm doing the best I can here. And then this time we don't even have to wait for Chaz's reward. It's straight to the shop, where I can upgrade the flame weapon to maximum. And then it's on to World 3, which takes a spookier aesthetic. And it doesn't matter that I kill this tall creature here, we have all we need. There's a little secret here if you shoot into the wall, but like I said, we're good. Won't be going back for that. This game has a bunch of little secrets like that, actually. It's pretty neat. This bat's invincible, so we just gotta follow him in. Then this is where I take my one hit for the level. It can be a little tricky otherwise. These guys are just jumped around, having a good time, but we gotta take them out. And then I can use my charge attack to hit this linked bat in the top left, since the charge attack has a slightly taller hitbox. Jump the onion, and then here we are with sort of a shout out to the classic game, Ghosts and Goblins. I think the ghosts are my favorite enemy in the game. Just look at them. Oh, also they can shoot lightning sometimes, so watch out for that. And then coming up here is one of the biggest mysteries in this game. It starts by getting on the broom, which is a much faster way to travel, and also a tribute to another C64 game called Cauldron. Then if you move through this area in just the right way, the enemies won't spawn for a while, and then they'll just show up later, in the same position they would have been, but out of place in the level. I'm not exactly sure what causes it, and I'll leave a video in the description to show when it works and when it doesn't, and if anyone wants to look at it, that'd be cool. But when it does work, we can fly all the way to the end of the level, even though it doesn't look like there's an enemy at the end. This will save about 15 seconds overall. If I don't get this trick, then I have to die at the next checkpoint. Because while you're on the broom, there's no way to shoot, and there's no way to get off until the timer runs out. So if an enemy's in your way, it's just tough luck. Here we are at the final shop of the game now, and I need to buy the straight shot to be able to defeat the boss this time. The only weapons we won't see are the scatterball, which I already talked about, the super droopy, which is the same as the starting weapon, but it shoots a little farther, the wiggler, which moves in sort of a sine wave pattern, and the curly whirly, which is actually intended to be used in this level. I'd say this is by far the hardest level of the game, and I think it's the only clean run I've done through it actually. Here you can drop down in between the middle platform and find an invisible broom. That's how you collect those extra lives that are down on the spikes there. Of course you have to wait out the broom timer, because there's enemies in the way immediately. Next there's this big green guy who's in the way. He seems to be sort of a test of whether your weapons are strong enough to defeat him before he just walks into you. You can only have 2 shots on the screen at once, and I find that spacing them out a little with the flamer seems to do more damage overall. After these jumpers, there's this larger guy just sitting around shooting at you, but it turns out only his head has a hitbox, so you can walk right under him. I purposefully shoot the broom here, because it's in the way and wouldn't be faster to get on. Then I have to go underneath and shoot the box, because it's linked to the rainbow flame up top. And then there's quite a few invincible enemies here that you need to wait for their cycle to all line up before you can walk past them. Shoot the rainbow ghost and then drop down to shoot this big guy here. His face flies off right away, but that doesn't matter. He's still pretty healthy. This next section is probably the toughest. There's these enemies that swoop down from above, and it almost seems random where they appear. I've found a pretty decent path through this section, but it doesn't always work, so I was quite relieved to get through here. And then we're on to the final stretch of this level. There's a few large enemies, and then there's sort of this puzzle section, and then the boss. This dragon is no problem. He only takes a few hits. But this large ghost after him is a big problem. So much of a problem, I've saved my one hit all the way up to this point to get through him. But I need one more hit to make it through the final section, so I take a quick death here to reset that. Only the rainbow flame is vulnerable here, so you kill him and then you jump in between the other ones. And then here we see in the background what the demons are doing to our friends. Don't worry guys, we'll be back, I think. Here's this sort of puzzle section I mentioned. You need to use certain weapons in order to hit certain enemies that are linked together so that you can get past this mess. One of the enemies can only be hit by the curly whirly, since it does an upward loop straight in front of you. This is why I needed an extra hit, so I could just jump through this and not have to worry about it. And then we're at the final boss. The blue enemy at the top needs to go first, followed by the dragon, which will open the box at the top to this disco ghost raven guy. And this is why I went out of my way for a couple creatures. It's about 12 seconds saved for each upgrade on the straight weapon to take this guy out. And then we have one more friend in danger. Here I inch up a little slowly. I remember being real nervous since this run was so good. You just need to defeat a certain number of enemies that this guy turns out, and then the same sort of thing at the top. After you defeat these weirdos at the top, a ball will fall down, so you just push it to the right? No, just kidding. You need to shoot it to the left. And somehow it just magically gains enough momentum to launch itself over the right side and spill the acid. And that'll do it for creatures. I enjoyed playing this game and I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any suggestions for me, games to learn or anything, you can leave them down in the comments. But for now, I'll just let this ending play out. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. See ya!